Good afternoon from Amsterdam, and welcome back to day 2 of our virtual investment series event. For anyone who wasn't with us yesterday, I'm Peter George, the Senior Director of Private Sector and Investment Activity at the Alliance, at the Clean Cooking Alliance. And I'll start off by giving a bit of a recap of yesterday's content. Yesterday, we received opening remarks followed by 3 panel discussions. First, with a focus on finance and investment. Next, about business model elements such as pay-as-you-go, asset finance, and fuel sales. And finally, a discussion amongst some of the donors around results-based finance. In the opening session, our 4 speakers provided great context for the rest of the day. We heard about GetInvest's continued commitment to support companies in the clean cooking sector with advisory services through their Finance Catalyst program. The Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a longtime supporter of clean cooking, reminded us how this is a problem, but also an opportunity. Despite all the important impact-related reasons to pursue clean cooking as a company or an investor, the commercial opportunities cannot be overlooked as well. Without seizing on them, financing to address the issue will remain with the public sector and philanthropy, and that simply won't cut it. I thought it was a very fitting message to set the tone for the rest of the conversations. We heard about the European Commission's growing commitment to the sector, including their support for the Spark Plus Africa Fund through a significant investment of first loss capital, which will mobilize pension funds and other institutional investors. And finally, we heard how the Clean Cooking Alliance remains committed to achieving scale and sustainability through supporting venture, ecosystem, and consumer-oriented interventions. We went on to the first session about investment, which was led by Shell Foundation. There were many interesting takeaways, but I'll touch on a few. Several panelists pointed to a visible evolution in the market, how different the discussions and companies are versus certainly the more distant past, but even relative to just 2 years ago. This is evolution towards more product innovation, more commercial viability of business models, and professionalism in the sector. There was mention that this space looks perhaps how off-grid solar did maybe 7 years ago, and how there are various opportunities for us to shortcut their growth path and accelerate our progress. Also mentioned was how it now looks like we are at an inflection point with companies finally getting to the stage where they have scalable technologies and business models, and that over the coming several years, they will have the data and track record that will allow them to mobilize large amounts of capital. Circle Gas mentioned that the company already has raised sufficient capital to get to 35,000 households in the very near future, within a few months, I believe. Which will be a big step towards demonstrating viability at some degree of scale. Relatedly, there was a discussion around how financial and operational reporting through standardized key performance indicators could play a major role in unlocking large capital flows. On this front, I would just mention that we at the Clean Cooking Alliance are starting to work on this. And so anyone with an interest on that front around sort of standardization of KPIs for either the clean cooking sector, or as I think one of the panelists mentioned, the various clean cooking subsectors, feel free to reach out directly. We'd love to discuss further. We heard about the importance of disintegration of the value chain and specialization of companies for greater efficiency, and that financing is required throughout the value chain. This must be provided in a way which aligns with the needs, whether that's further investment in R&D, investment for inventory, or to finance consumer receivables. And finally, there was discussion around electric cooking and the work that continues to be required on the products and their financing to ensure this is commercially viable. There seemed to be general agreement on the panel that this was certainly the long-term direction of travel, but indeed that it will take time. One panelist mentioned that they see this as being over a 20-year time horizon. In the next session about business models, there was a terrific discussion around various innovations in the market to overcome long-standing challenges preventing faster uptake of modern cooking solutions. There was reference to Paygas's fractional refilling model for LPG, which cuts down both CapEx and OpEx while eliminating the need to take on credit risk, since it requires companies to prepay for gas, but in a way that is affordable. ATEC talked about the challenges and opportunities associated with bringing asset financing in-house for its biogas operation, which is another business line on top of manufacturing and distribution. This requires additional skills and processes, but will allow them to be more scalable than exclusively relying on outside partners to finance their customers. We heard about some of the complexities around asset financing, the fact that most clean cooking products are not electronic, so they are not conducive to embedded remote monitoring. However, Angaza spoke about technological advances on that front. There was discussion around remetering, which I thought was really interesting, where a consumer may have paid off a loan for a solar home system, and the distributor then has the option to remeter the paid off product to allow pay-as-you-go payments on additional products such as cook stoves with no embedded metering functionality. Another interesting point was made about results-based finance and how companies like ATEC are looking to quickly scale up across different countries. Of course, RBF programs limited to individual countries can make this more challenging. So perhaps that's an opportunity for donors and implementers of RBF to take that on board. There was discussion about carbon finance and how in some cases the carbon schemes may need to catch up and align with pay-as-you-go and digitized technologies that are quickly advancing the ability of the market to monitor asset deployment and customer usage. And finally, I heard a fascinating statistic, but one that's not particularly surprising, that the rate of customer acquisition for pay-as-you-go is about 5 times what it would be for businesses that are not pay-as-you-go enabled. I think it's fair to say that there was broad consensus on the panel that pay-as-you-go in its various forms will increasingly dominate amongst companies selling a range of products to their customers. The third session on results-based finance yielded some interesting details and lessons learned from a number of grant providers in Kenya, Zambia, Rwanda, and elsewhere. A few key takeaways. The importance and challenges of ensuring local and international company participation, and the belief that companies with deep local roots are more likely to serve the market over the long term. The importance and challenges associated with balancing the objectives of the funders, who often prioritize highly uneconomic to serve customers, while the private sector would likely prioritize customers who are more commercially viable to serve. And the risk of unsustainability once the grant money is spent if subsidizing something that remains uneconomic thereafter. One panelist alluded to these issues as being important fundamental design questions. The complexities of establishing appropriate pricing of subsidies. One panelist referenced game theory in describing their efforts to try to anticipate the requirements and thresholds of various actors in both the public and private sectors in order to try to make something come together and for outcomes in the market to occur. And finally, there was recognition that feedback loops are critical and that feedback, apologies, I've lost my place, sorry, one second. Feedback loops are critical, and feedback from the market is an essential element, and that this can be handled in different ways depending on the design of the facility. So hopefully that's a bit of a helpful recap of some of the content from yesterday. There was obviously a lot more, but if you weren't able to join We will be putting recordings of all the sessions on our website, so no need to worry that you missed anything.